Welcome to the special live edition of Go Vote Omaha. This is a candidate forum for the Metropolitan Utilities District presented by the League of Women Voters of Greater Omaha. I'm Geri Simon, a League member and the moderator for the forum. The League of Women Voters never supports or opposes political parties or candidates. We present this forum solely for voter education. The format for our forum this evening is as follows. Each candidate will have a 1-minute opening statement, and we'll follow that with a question and answer period. This is a live program, so you can call in your questions to the number that's on your screen, and we will try to ask as many of those questions of the candidates as we can. We'll conclude things with a 1-minute closing statement by the candidates. A timekeeper will signal the candidates when they have 30 seconds of time remaining and when to stop speaking. Before the forum began this evening, the candidates drew lots to determine their speaking order, and I'll introduce them to you in that order now. There are 8 candidates running for 2 seats on the MUD board. 6 of the candidates are with us this evening, and they are Mike McGowan, Bert Mayer, Tom Wirtz, Jim Cusack, Patrick McPherson, and Crystal Gable. And now we'll go right to our opening statements, and we'll begin with Mike McGowan.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Mike McGowan, candidate for the MUD Board of Directors. I'm married to my wife, Mary. We've been married for 42 years. We have 5 children, 6 grandchildren. I'm a lifelong resident of Omaha. I attended Creighton Prep High School, went on to Creighton University where I earned a Bachelor of Science degree in mathematics and a Master's of Business degree. I worked 36 years for Northern Natural Gas Company, and then I served 3 years on the MUD board from 2010 through 2012, and I was the chairman of the board for MUD for 2012. I know the utility business. I can make a difference, and I can bring safe and reliable water and natural gas service to the ratepayers at the lowest cost possible. I am retired, and being retired, I have the time and personal commitment to do this job like no other candidate can. I am committed to providing the service to the ratepayers at the lowest cost possible. A vote for me is a vote for you, the ratepayers. Thank you.
Thank you. Bert Mayer.
Good evening. My name is Bert Mayer. I am running for the Metropolitan Utilities District Board of Directors because I feel that there is a great need for change on that Board of Directors. But I would first like to thank the League of Women Voters for giving us this opportunity to present our views and positions to the voters of this community. Under our Republican form of government, it is very important that the voters know who they are electing to represent them in positions of power and authority. I would also like to take a moment to thank Preston Love Jr. for agreeing to join my campaign. Preston Love is the leader of the Black Votes Matter initiative in North Omaha. I am the only viable candidate for this board that lives east of 72nd Street, and I want to assure those voters that I will be representing them on the board. I understand it's an at-large election, and I will also be representing all other people in MUD's service area.
Thank you. And Tom Wirtz.
I'd like to thank the League for having this tonight, and I'd also like to thank all of my fellow men and women that are here tonight. It's really nice to know that there are people in the community that will actually step forward and get involved. I'm a 4th generation Omahan. I went to high school here and I went to grade school. I got a Bachelor of Arts at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln and a law degree. Some of you may know me from MUD. I had a 30-year career at MUD. I retired in 2011 as president of MUD. I was there for 9 years, but I started at the bottom. I gained a lot of experience in the gas and regulatory aspects of it. In some respects, I think I'm uniquely qualified to be on the board. I've decided to run for this board because I think I can make a difference. I know the company backward and forward. We all bring talents to the board, but I think I can really make a difference. My main goal is being on the board is that I'm going to keep MUD public. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Cusack.
Good evening. I'm Jim Cusack. And first of all, I'd like to echo Tom's praise of the League of Women Voters Greater Omaha for giving us this forum and opportunity. A little bit about my background. Currently, I serve as Vice Chair of the City of Omaha Park and Recreation Board. I was appointed by Mayor Stothert and was confirmed by the City Council. I'm kind of a diverse candidate. I have 35 years plus in the energy business, having worked for 4 of the regional utilities in this area. Worked for Northern Natural Gas, Mid-American Energy, Nebraska Municipal Power Pool, and retired from the Omaha Public Power District. I have a master's degree in public administration, and I have an undergraduate degree in business administration from the University of Nebraska in Omaha. I have done civic involvement. I've been involved in charitable contributions with the United Way, Child Saving Institute, and Creighton Prep. Currently, I'm married to my wife, Linda. We've been married for 42 years. We have 6 grandchildren and 3 children.
Thank you. Patrick McPherson.
Good evening. I'm Patrick McPherson, and I too want to thank the League of Women Voters for this opportunity to be here tonight. I think I am uniquely qualified for this job because of my background. I am an Omaha native. I graduated from Central High School and Creighton University, and I have been involved in many local nonprofit organizations. I come out of the banking business and have been involved in a lot of political appointments also. I'm running for this board because I want to be an advocate for the ratepayer. I think a lot of individuals don't understand their bill, and I'll try to help them with that. I believe that safety, transparency, and fiduciary responsibilities are what characterize the need for this board and for this election. Thank you.
Thank you. And Crystal Gable.
Hi, I'm Crystal Gable. I'm 31. I'm a professional writer, but more importantly, I'm an activist in Nebraska. I've been working with Legal Marijuana Now for the past year, collecting signatures. We want to move forward with green, sustainable energy in our state, and that's why I'm running for the board here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for your opening statements. Now we'll move into our questions. And the first question is, what assures MUD customers that what happened in Flint, Michigan to the water supply won't happen here? And we'll start the answers with Bert Mayer.
Thank you. Well, first of all, if I'm elected to the board, the first thing I will do is ask for current water quality reports from management. I will review those reports and consult with my water quality expert. I have hired a water quality expert who is a professor at the University of Nebraska Medical Center College of Public Health. I am not a scientist, so I will ask him to interpret these water quality reports for me. And if there is any need for improvement, and as I understand it, there is some room for improvement in the quality of our water, I will get that input from him and deal with management in improving the quality of our water.
Thank you. Tom Wertz.
Okay, thank you. We're lucky here in Omaha, Nebraska. We have 3 really great sources of water. Platte South, we have the Florence plant, and we have Platte West. Our treatment process in Omaha, Nebraska does not lend itself to the problem that they had in Flint, Michigan, simply because of the treatment process. The lead is not corrosive, the water, to bring the lead off the pipes into the water. But to make sure that the Flint, Michigan situation doesn't happen in Omaha, the first thing we have to do is make sure that we retain competent management at MUD. Second thing we need to do is to have an engaged board, and a board that doesn't just show up, but a board that actually understands the process. EPA regulations, Safe Drinking Water Standards Act are very complicated, and the board has to be involved, and they have to retain good people, and they have to, as I said earlier, to stay engaged. As a practical matter, again, our treatment process is so good, I know that from working on the water side for 30 years at MUD, that we shouldn't have a problem as they did in Flint. But the board does have to remain vigilant. The problem they had in Flint was that they changed the water source. They were taking it from the city of Detroit, from another river. And the board needs to remain very vigilant in the event there is a change in the treatment process. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Cusack.
Well, as we all know, safety is the #1 priority of any utility district. And what happened in Flint, Michigan was a sure tragedy. But my specific proposals would involve 2 things. First of all, the firm reservoirs would be inspected in a timely manner. And what I mean by that, it would be well above the industry standards. One of the first things I would do is check on how many times our firm reservoirs are being evaluated. And secondly, when it comes to the Florence plant, I would look at recently they just implemented some new mechanical and control systems. I want to make sure that those were in fact initiated, activated, and monitored in a timely fashion.
Thank you. Patrick McPherson.
Thank you. I would agree that the water that we drink is safe. In fact, I find it a little bit unusual that I'm trying to drink water out of a commercial bottle when I drink water at home out of the tap every day. We are blessed with the fact that we have 3 sources of water, unlike Flint, Michigan. What happened in Flint, Michigan was unconscionable. It was a breakdown of process. And someone should have been asking questions long before this happened. I bring a background of asking questions. I serve on the State Board of Education right now. I've asked a lot of difficult questions and taken difficult stands with management. And we need to do that. We need to have someone there that is not afraid to ask questions. The average tenure on the MUD board is over 17 years. We have members that have been on there for over 30 years. And I would submit to you that once you're on a board that long, you become part of the management, not a board of a director who is apt to ask difficult questions. I will ask those difficult questions, and I will ask that the processes that we establish are followed specifically, and that management and employees be held accountable for those.
Thank you. Crystal Gable.
Flint, Michigan, it's really too bad that it happened because I think it starts with the housing issue. We have a lot of poor and underemployed people living in bad housing with poor infrastructure. And those are the people that I represent, who I talk to when I travel across Nebraska. And they really want to change overall with how we do energy and utilities in Nebraska. That means clean, sustainable energies. Sustainable energy. Natural gas is clean burning, but it does ruin our earth, and it does cause problems like we saw in Flint, Michigan. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike McGowan.
Thank you. We are very fortunate here in Omaha, as Tom Wirtz mentioned. MUD's water quality is monitored regularly and exceeds the federal regulations. We also have a triangle of water treatment plants, the Florence plant, the Platte West and Platte South treatment plants. And while I was on the board, I worked hard to ensure that the water quality standards met or exceeded the federal regulations. But we can't rely on our past. We got to look forward to the future. We must stay strong, have strong management and an active board to ensure the continuity of the good water quality that we have today. When elected to the board, I will work hard to ensure the water quality stays at the greatest level possible.
Thank you. Now we have a question called in, and it is, in 2011, the MUD board voted to give another director a senior management job for over $200,000 a year. If you were on the board, how would you handle that situation? And we'll start with Tom Wirtz.
Thank you, Jerry. That's an interesting question. I was not there when that happened. I would say this: if I would take office, that is not going to happen. That was a unique situation. All I know about the situation is what I read in the paper. But I do know this. I think when you have men on a board and women on a board that are giving another board member a high-paying job like that, whether or not it's right or wrong, I think there's a serious question of an appearance of impropriety. As a practicing lawyer, that was the ethical standard that we always had to live by. It wasn't that you were doing something right or wrong, but it's an appearance, it's a poor appearance. So I would just say this: I would actually support legislation that could not happen. I know that the MUD board, since that happened, has passed a resolution, I believe, that said that if someone's serving on a board, they would have to, I think, wait a year or two before they would take a job on the board. I just don't think that's a good idea, and I would actually support legislation to stop that. It has nothing to do with whether or not the person on the board that was given the job was qualified. I happen to know the person. I had a good working relationship with that person. But it's just the fact that I think the public deserves better. It's just a poor appearance.
Thank you. Jim Cusack.
Well, I agree with Tom. I think of the impropriety involved, but more importantly, let's take a step back. I kind of look at the district itself, and if we're picking the best candidate we can fill, Obviously, they did a search. The search was entailing, it took a lot of things in consideration, and Mr. Doyle came out at the top in that particular position. So I would basically uphold it.
Thank you. Patrick McPherson.
I think this is not a matter of passing legislation. This is a matter of ethics among the board members. And I personally believe that none of us, anyone seeking a board position, is not someone that is or should be considered for a management position. I would strongly oppose that in the future. I would vote against any such recurrence of that. And again, I think it's a matter of ethics, and it's a matter of responsibility and transparency to the public. The public needs to have trust in MUD. This was an incident where, in fact, the public actually lost trust in the board of directors.
Thank you. Crystal Gable.
Oh, well, it's hard to justify a paycheck like that to management when the people doing the work make way, way, way less than that. And I agree that jumping from board to management is not a very wise choice. We are elected here by voters, and management has to do with companies and corporations, so there's two different worlds there. I think that those type of salaries really need to be evaluated for public employees, and we need to readjust those where those funds are going to salaries and readjust it so that it affects the people here in the city instead, who are really suffering from our utilities issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike McGowan.
Thank you. Well, this is a case where I'm going to disagree with my fellow candidates. I was actually on the board in 2011 when we appointed that person from the board, one of my fellow board members, to a management position, and I feel it was the right thing to do. We have an obligation to the ratepayers, as my fellow candidates have said, and our obligation is to make sure that the right person with the right talents and the right skill set is placed in the job that will provide the best benefits to the ratepayers. That particular person had skill sets in information technology and marketing that we dearly needed at the district, and he fulfilled that, and he's still working there today and doing an excellent job. I stand by my decision. It was the right decision.
Thank you. And Burt Mayer.
I think the example that you gave is endemic of a fundamental problem that I see that exists on that board of directors. The coziness that exists between management and the board of directors must come to an end. The nepotism and cronyism that exists has to come to an end. One of my opponents proposes to join the board, and in his role on the board would supervise the CEO of MUD, who he worked with for 30 years. How can any person be objective and fulfill his fiduciary obligation to the ratepayers in that situation? There must be transparency on the board. The board is a political subdivision of the state. In that role, it cannot keep anything secret or conceal information from the ratepayers. The board meetings need to be opened up to the public. The meetings need to stop being held in a secured area of MUD's headquarters. They need to be held in a venue where the public can attend meetings freely, also have free parking, and be given an opportunity at the end of those meetings to ask questions of the members of the board.
Thank you. Here's our next question. What should the MUD board do to ensure a quick, effective, and safe response when a gas leak is reported? Does MUD regularly monitor for leaks and repair lines? How do we prevent another EMS pub-like explosion? And we'll start with Jim Kusek.
Well, actually, I've given a lot of thought to this situation, and one of the things that I really wanted to get involved with, and I think one of my fellow candidates brought this up, and I originally presented it in one of the questionnaires that was answered, was the fact I think we need to sit back and really look at a task force, or what I call a citizens review board. The City of Omaha has such a thing. I know the Omaha Police Department has such a thing. Having been on the Park and Recreation Board, I've heard this reference a lot. And we get a lot of different views as far as what the community looks for, and then we bring that together with the industry standards. And I think another one of my panelists mentioned this. We have certain standards that are evolved, and MUD is well above those standards in most cases, but we need to revisit that. You know, things have changed dramatically recently. We have new technology. We just saw in the news the privacy issues that come up. So we have a lot of different things that are kind of re-evolving. So we need to step back and kind of use this situation, this tragedy that we've had, in a positive light, so to speak, and go forward with that. So I would be more involved and inclined to work with the task force to get this done.
Thank you. Patrick
I'd
McPherson.
take exception with my comrade here on that issue. I don't think this is a matter of establishing a task force. I think this is the job of the board of directors to take that responsibility. What happened in the old market was a failure of process, and folks need to be held accountable when that happens. Whether it's an employee, or whether it's a supervisor, or whether it's the manager of the district, they need to be held accountable. We need to have, and one of the jobs of a board member is to make sure that those policies and procedures are in effect to protect the safety of the individuals, whether it be water or whether it be gas. And frankly, there was a failure there. We have an infrastructure replacement system at the MUD that replaces aging water and gas lines. That needs to continue. But beyond that, we need to make sure that we are following the processes that have been established, and that will protect the safety of the individuals in this community.
Thank you. Crystal Gable.
Im's Pub. I have a very good friend who was at Im's when it exploded, and she was the one who evacuated the customers from there. It could have been a tragedy, but instead nobody was hurt seriously. And my understanding is that the work outside was being done by out-of-state contractors, which is a huge issue. Why didn't we have local people working on our local infrastructure? Again, this is mismanagement of money. I don't know how much money was spent to these out-of-state contractors, but that's money that could have been invested in Omaha, and those out-of-state contractors neglected to go into that restaurant to talk to those people to let them know they nicked a line. So maybe this is an issue as a board we can fix, starting with hiring local people to do our work here in Omaha. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike McGowan.
Thank you. Let me start off by saying safety is paramount. Safety should not be compromised for any reason whatsoever. Safety should be foremost in every task and every project for every MUD employee. MUD must work hard to continue to grow its culture of safety. Safety procedures must always be reviewed on a current basis. Having said that, with regards to the Im's Pub, what I think they ought to do, if I was on the MUD board, what I would do is establish a task force to review those safety procedures, and I would have a third-person party, either from another utility, another company, a contractor, a specialist, somebody that would serve on that task force and provide an objective view when those procedures are reviewed. Then I would set a definite timeline and have the findings of that review, that task force, the good and the bad, presented at a board meeting to all of the board members for review and discussion. Secondly, I would make sure that the pipes and valves, the indicators and the locations of those are thoroughly reviewed so that doesn't happen again. We know exactly where they're at, and that cannot continue to happen. We need to make sure that database is up and running and current. Thank you.
Thank you. Bert, Mayor.
The fire and explosion that occurred in the old market on January 9th was totally preventable. What happened that day is the legacy of those people in management and on the board of directors that failed in their duties and responsibilities to the ratepayers. Scott, the president of MUD, said the 95-minute response time was reasonable. And worse, members of the board of directors defended what management did and failed to do in connection with that fire and explosion. MUD needs to undertake an aggressive modernization program. We need to bring MUD into the 21st century. There needs to be an electronic map developed of all underground systems under the streets of the city of Omaha. On January 9th, the first responder from MUD should have been able to take out a handheld device in which he could have punched in the address of the location of the fire and immediately have gotten the precise location of the shutoff valve for that active gas line. He was not able to do that because he was not given the tools by management and the board of directors to respond effectively to that emergency.
Thank you. And Tom Wertz.
Going around the district campaigning, the situation in the old market is on everybody's minds, and I know some statements were made that 95 minutes was acceptable, but I think everyone knows that 95 minutes was not acceptable. The sad part was that most of the time, the MUD response is very good. It meets all standards under DOT, and most of the people that work there do a very good job. We had a unique set of circumstances that happened, and I'm not going to defend them. Tom Dowd on our board said that they are going to basically be fixing that issue. What I would be doing right now if I was on that board is this. I would take that incident that happened and I would basically get an engaged board to work with top management to review it. And I call it, when I was practicing law, case study. I would analyze what happened. Probably some good things happened, a lot of bad things happened. They need to analyze what procedures are good and weren't followed. They also need to analyze what new procedures are going to be needed. There's been a little bit of this, I think, kind of going around the community, the heads need to roll or something. You have to remember, employee discipline has to be a means to an end. The end is that what happened in the old market doesn't happen again. If that means there's employee discipline, be that as it may. I am strongly opposed to bringing in an outside consultant, wasting ratepayer customer money to study this. The people that know the procedures here are the MUD board and management. We shouldn't be wasting $50,000 to $100,000 when the people that are there, and frankly, if people on that board want to do that, they should resign from the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Here's our next question. How can MUD work with the state of Nebraska to prevent utility shutoffs in households with children, the disabled, and frail elderly? And we'll start with Patrick McPherson.
Well, I think that the utility does have a reason to work with the state on this. What we do have to remember is there's a balance here. Certainly we don't want to be shutting off gas on folks during the middle of the winter. We've got some other things that are happening at MUD. We've got folks that support a lot of these opportunities to work with those that are potential shutoffs. I'm not a big believer in state legislation when it comes to dealing with issues like this. We have lots of community organizations that are very involved in this, and I'm very empathetic with people that are facing these problems. And during the winter months, we obviously got to be much more sensitive to the issues. We don't want people dying in their homes or children dying in their homes because of the fact that their gas was turned off. But we also got a job, as a board of director, you have a fiduciary duty to the citizens and to the organization to run it in the most efficient and effective and cost-effective manner possible. So it's a matter of not necessarily working with the state of Nebraska on this issue, I don't believe. I don't believe we need more legislation. It's a matter of working with local community-based nonprofits. Thank you.
Thank you. Crystal Gable.
Utilities should never be turned off because you can't afford your bill. It's a basic human right to have housing and to have housing that supports you. And so as a board, we really need to try hard to work with other organizations to make sure those people aren't displaced from their homes and that they can stay in their homes and have these utilities during their times of need. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike McGowan.
Thank you. Shut off of service is a delicate problem. My previous candidate here said there should never be any shutoffs. Then who's going to pay the bills? We need people, we have to have a reasonable shutoff policy. We have to have people know they have to pay their bills and do what they can to pay their bills. I think we have to work with the state and work with community associations to work with the people and provide assistance. MUD does have a shutoff policy, and the service is not shut off if the temperature is below a certain threshold. Now, I do think there's work to be done and improvement that needs to be made in the shutoff policy to help people get service back on after a shutoff. I think some of that is very difficult and needs to be looked at. But MUD's policy is reasonable, but it has room for improvement.
Thank you. Bert, Mayor.
First, I would review MUD's shut-off policy to ensure that it is in fact reasonable. I agree that there may be some circumstances where shut-off is appropriate. However, there are many community-based organizations which can help ratepayers keep up with their bills. I grew up in a very poor household in Grand Island, Nebraska. I understand what it means, particularly as a child. I understood what it meant when my parents could sometimes not pay the monthly rent or the monthly utility bills. So I can empathize with that. And I would repeat that I am the only viable candidate for the board that lives east of 72nd Street. So I can appreciate what some of the folks that live in those areas at 24th and Lake and at 24th and Q are facing. I will pay great attention to this issue, and if there needs to be changes made, they will be made. I also agree that the state of Nebraska should not be involved in a utility shut-off program. They are far too removed from the needs and concerns of our community.
Thank you. Tom Wertz.
Well, the state is involved in shutoffs. There are guidelines that come down from the social services, and there's also a state statute that prevents shutoffs when the temperature gets below a certain period. When I was at MUD as president, we expanded that shutoff program, the moratorium, to make it for 3 months and not just what was required by the state. Speaking from the heart, one of the hardest things I had to do when I was president of MUD was to deal with people that couldn't afford to pay their bills. I worked very hard to set up the Heat Aid Fund back in 1982 to take care of people that couldn't afford their bills. Sadly, and I talked about this when I was out in the community when I first decided to run, when I'm elected, I want to set up another fund because there is a really interesting gap of people that do not qualify for the Heat Aid Fund because they have an asset, they have a home, they have a certain amount of a Social Security check or something like that. They don't qualify for the Heat Aid Fund, but because of things that have happened to them in their life, because of an illness or they've lost a job, they can't afford to pay their utility bill. And when I left there, it was very sad. They came to me and I had to basically shut some of those people off. They were shut off after I left. I want to set up a fund, and not to do this forever for these people that kind of fall into that gap, but I want to take care of those people and set up a fund so on a temporary basis we can take care of our customers that have these sorts of real life situations happen to them, like a loss of a job or a medical situation. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jim Cusack.
Well, I can speak from this firsthand, and because I unfortunately have had a family member, an immediate family member, that was involved in a disconnect. And besides safety, probably the number one thing, since the customers are the owners of this utility, is promoting their safety and their health. And I would like to extend this not only to the disenabled, but also to the mentally challenged and to all the individuals. And I echo Tom's thought process, because in fact I had thought of it also, is looking at another fund, something special, and going back and reevaluating the guidelines, because one of the biggest problems I had when I was working with my family member was getting communication and timely communication with the agencies and getting callbacks, and in some cases never getting a call back. So there's a lot of disgruntled customer owners out there that never get a call back. So again, we need new procedures, new funds, and to realize the owners are the customers.
Thank you. Here's our next question. Talk about MUD's role in methane production at the landfill. Has it made any difference in residential prices, and should the program be expanded? And we'll start with Crystal Gable.
Thanks. Methane production from the landfill, that's interesting. I am actually pushing for methane production from hemp. UNK has passed research for hemp production, and we're pushing for legalization of hemp production and industry in the United States. It's something that can clean our water tables and make our drinking water much, much safer. So we're talking about hemp from landfills. I talk methane from hemp.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Mike McGowan.
Thank you. I know that methane can be produced from landfills, although I don't know exactly if MUD is actually getting any of that use at this point in time. Currently, we're blessed with abundant natural gas supplies and cheap prices because of low oil prices. Energy costs are at the lowest level they've been in years. So I think the methane from landfills has taken a back seat. I think we need to keep our eyes on it, but right now I just don't think it's that active part of the portfolio.
Thank you. Bert, Mayor.
I am strongly in favor of any renewable energy initiatives that can be taken. I think in terms of methane production at landfills, it needs to be analyzed on a cost-effective basis. If it is cost-effective, I think it should continue or be expanded. I also feel that anything else that can be done to reduce the consumption of oil and natural gas should, just because natural gas and oil is at a 10 or 20-year lows, does not mean that we should be consuming those non-renewable, those fossil fuel sources of energy at an unsustainable rate.
Thank you. Tom Wertz.
Production of methane is kind of interesting, and I too applaud alternative fuels. But with alternative fuels, you have to kind of have a cost-to-benefit ratio to look at them to see if it's going to basically help out our customers or not. With natural gas basically trading at $2 an MCF, frankly, it doesn't make a lot of economic sense for our customers to basically be buying methane. It's my understanding right now that the methane used, that is being produced from our landfill, is actually being utilized by OPPD to make electricity. That's for their board of directors. I think that's really interesting. On the other hand, if they're buying methane at $6 an MCF, I would question why they wouldn't just purchase natural gas from MED at a much lower price and basically help their ratepayers out a little better. But actually, I think it's interesting. I think it's very innovative, but I don't think it's a very huge part of, it doesn't really compete with us, and it wouldn't be a huge part of our portfolio.
Thank you. Jim Cusack.
Actually, this is one of the initiatives I was looking at. In my past role as municipal marketing, I've worked with many utilities in the state of Nebraska. And many of these utilities do have methane production and have different unique ideas about them. I think, again, we need to look all avenues as far as being able to produce additional revenues. Because at this stage, any way we can expand our revenue base or decrease expenses would involve substantive reductions of rates to the ratepayer customers.
Thank you. Patrick McPherson.
I'm not sure that methane gas is a cost-effective alternative for the district. So unless it is cost-effective, I would not necessarily support it. Now I want to say a few other things that are a little off topic here since I have a little time, and I'd like to talk about transparency. And I really believe that the Metropolitan Utilities District needs to develop a better transparency policy. Right now, if you go to the website and you want to send an email to a board member, it goes to the board member through somebody else. At the State Board of Education, where I serve, we have our own telephone numbers, we have our own addresses, and we have our own emails on those sites. So people can contact us directly. I think it is very important that the ratepayer have somebody that will listen to them and know that that response is coming from that individual board member rather than potentially a secretary or an employee of the district. So I just want to say that if we may not get to transparency, but I want to go on record as saying that if I'm elected, my name and my phone number and my email will be up there for everybody to see and to contact me.
Thank you. Here's a question from a viewer. And it is, my typical bill is made up of $55 in fees and only $45 in charges for the water and gas I actually use. Why is this fair? I want to pay for what I use. Why not include these fees in the usage cost? And we'll start with Mike McGowan.
Well, there's couple things about the MED bill. One of the big fees that people don't understand is the sewer fees. Those fees are for the city. They go direct to the city for the city sewer project. MUD is paid by the city of Omaha to collect the sewer fees and it's a good benefit for the ratepayers. MUD has the water information from the meters and know how much to charge people for the use of their sewers, and they pay that to the city. It's not MUD, it's a service MUD is getting paid for, and the ratepayers benefit from it. Another good fee on there, another large fee, is sales tax. We, as ratepayers, have to pay sales tax on our gas and water services, and MUD has gone to the legislature to get that sales tax repealed, but we have not been able to. Now, MUD is not like OPPD. MUD has not moved to put a large portion of their collection, their rates, on the fixed side and collect it regardless of usage. MUD has a good balance between fixed fees and usage fees, and I think that's reasonable, but we need to keep a good eye on that and review it at all times.
Thank you. Bert, Mayor.
If I'm elected to the MUD board, one of the first things I will do is move for a re-examination of the arrangement that MUD has with the city regarding billing. I understand that the city of Omaha is saving a lot of money in postage by piggybacking its bills onto MUD, but I have great concern about the negative publicity that MUD receives from these charges that are on the MUD bill that have nothing to do with the cost of their water and gas delivery. The fixed fees, I don't think there should be any fixed. I agree with Mike that sales and use tax probably should be, that water and gas should be exempt from sales and use tax. I don't think there should be any fixed fees on the MUD bill. It should strictly reflect the cost of the delivery of water and gas services.
Thank you. Tom Wertz.
While I was at MUD, for a number of years, I actually ran their legislative program. I testified against sales tax on utilities until I was blue in the face, and basically they have rejected it down in Lincoln. I think MUD has been pretty sincere over the years of trying to get that sales tax off the bill. On the issue of basically putting the SUE use fee for the city of Omaha on the MUD bill, I don't like it, nobody likes it, nobody at MUD likes it. The problem is the cost of having the city send that bill out separately is very high. And it just makes a lot of sense for one utility. Now, it could be OPPD, it could be on their bill, but I really think that we should just have it on one bill. And I think MUD may need to do a little more in educating the customers as to the fact that the city bill, I'll know that they have been trying. One thing, though, that I brought up in my initial press release when I decided to run is I think we need to re-examine the fixed costs. OPPD a few months ago set out very high fixed costs, and the public responded. They were very upset, and they did come in and reduce those. I think they adversely affect poor people that live in apartments. My fixed fee on my bill was $13.72 for my gas and $19.09 for my water before I used any water or gas. I'm lucky, I'm blessed, I can afford to do it. But a person that's in an apartment just getting out of college that uses very little utilities, I think it adversely affects them. The uses that they would even have would not arise to $20, and yet they're probably paying $30 or $40 in the service fee. I think we need to look at those and perhaps reduce them.
Thank you. Jim Cusack.
Yeah, I echo my fellow constituents here, sentiment concerning the sales tax. I also echo the fact that I think we need to revisit the fixed costs along with the user costs. And basically what you're really talking about is really a new redefined program to get the mechanism, the rate-making mechanism out to the constituents a little better. One of the questions that was posed to me in the interview process was, does this make sense to do this on the mailing? And I believe not. I think we should have basically town hall meetings where we can go out and discuss the rate structure so that the constituents get an idea as far as how the rates are calculated, how they're based. But we, again, are very fortunate because our rate structure nationwide is very, very good. So at that time, I'm more just to go out for town hall meetings.
Thank you. Patrick McPherson.
The state of Nebraska has hundreds and hundreds of sales tax exemptions, and I do not think it would be at all unfair for a sales tax exemption to exist on our utility bills. That would help the poor as well and help with some of these shutoffs possibly. But beyond that, folks are concerned about their utility bill. I have a bill here for $250, and more than half of that is for fees. You know, the individual that sent this to me, and I've got another one very similar to that, is concerned. They don't understand that. And that goes back to one of the things I think that we need to do a better job of. We need to do a better job of communicating with our ratepayers. You know, one of the things I will suggest if I'm elected to the board is that we ought to have much more public input. We ought to stream our meetings online. They ought to be available on the website for anybody to watch at their convenience. Going to a 6-year or going to district elections, I believe that the board should hold a meeting at least once every 4 years in each of those 6 new districts, and that it ought to be at a ratepayer-friendly time. But part of this problem is communication. Thank you.
Thank you. And Crystal Gable.
I agree that we're being taxed to death. So the tax is an issue for me on there. I don't think that we should be taxed for our utilities. As a professional writer, I do a lot of research about users and what users need. So I find the bill that I get in the mail to be very confusing, very convoluted, it misinforms me. So it doesn't surprise me we got a question about the bill. We definitely need more visibility. We need explanation that we are getting more than one bill at once. That's something that most people don't realize. I'm sure that's new news to them. And these fees, that pays management. I hate to say it, but that goes to those admin costs that really, really should be put right back into the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next question is, what's your position on fracking? How much of any of the gas used by MUD comes from fracking? And we'll start with Mayor.
Well, I do not know, not being on the board presently, I do not know how much of the gas that MUD receives comes from fracking. What I understand about fracking as a process concerns me because of the pollution of our groundwater and what it does to a substrata parts of our terrain. I really don't know anything else about that topic. But since I have more time, I would like to also go back to something I touched on earlier. I have great concern about the lack of independence on the MUD Board of Directors. One of those board members has been there 38 years. Another one who is running for re-election has been there for 30 years. I think it is, and that, by the way, if Jack Frost is re-elected, he will be 91 years old when he retires from the board, if he were to retire at that time. So I think there is a great need on the board for fresh blood, for a fresh perspective, and for fresh ideas and strong financial leadership, which the board presently does not provide.
Thank you. Tom Wertz.
I will move from the aged people on the MUD board back to fracking. The thing I like about fracking is that it puts people to work. We have a disappearing middle class in this country. It's the fault of both parties. What I liked about fracking was that we had an energy industry, and there were boom towns in North Dakota, in Oklahoma, and in Texas. The thing I don't like about fracking, there seems to be a serious issue as to one, whether it causes pollution. Second of all, whether or not the water that's injected into the ground actually can cause earthquakes. So I think there's some serious issues that we have to deal with fracking. I would hope that we could keep fracking and keep it safe. I know some states have just decided not to do it, like New York and Pennsylvania. The thing about fracking and MUD and how much gas we get from fracking, we really don't know. There's really 3 parts of the gas business. You have a gathering, you have a transportation, and then you have an LDC, which is a local distribution company. MUD is the local distribution company. We transport from Northern and we buy our gas. And so we buy gas from companies, and I suspect that it's really a very small amount that actually comes from fracking. So other than that, I really don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim Cusack.
Well, first of all, the negative thing about fracking is the pollution suspect, so to speak. But with that said, Tom brought up a good point. The utility business is based upon, and a lot of people would say this is a negative, they call it the good old network. What I'd like to say, it's not a good old network, it's a relationship network. And you know what that relationship is based on? It's based on integrity, upon honesty and truthfulness. And that's what the what the utility business has always been built on. And that's why I've been very, very proud to be associated with for 35 years. I think a lot of that has gone awry. I think MUD is very fortunate as a utility that has had a very reputable relationship in the utility industry. And I think, again, I'd like to reemphasize with the technological changes and the privacy changes, I think by moving forward with some new standards, and that's all we're really asking for tonight, is some new abilities and new standards to move forward. So I would hope that we can be able to do that very, very soon.
Thank you. Patrick McPherson.
I basically am a supporter of fracking. I do not believe that there's any scientific evidence at this point that points to the contrary as to its danger. There are some issues that need to be addressed, and I'd support addressing those. I also want to go back, though, if I may, to this issue of the tenure on the board. We have a number of people that have been on there for a long time. As I noted earlier, the average tenure is 17 years. I do not know of a corporate board that allows their board members to serve 17 years on average. I do not know of many nonprofits, and I've served on both local and national nonprofit boards, and most of them have a two-term maximum for folks to serve. I believe that when you have folks that have been on a board for that kind of time, for a long, long period of time, they become part of management, not part of the board of directors who is responsible for supervising. And for that reason, I want to add my voice to that concern on the issue of tenure on the board. Thank you.
Thank you. Crystal Gable.
Thank you to who asked this question. This is a very, very important issue when it comes to our utilities. Natural gas comes from fracking, and fracking is killing our earth. When we frack for natural gas, we're ruining, we're destroying, we're poisoning our water tables where you get your tap water. I don't drink the tap water in Omaha because I know there's chemicals in there, radioactive, organic, inorganic, farm chemicals, pesticides. So the issue of fracking is huge, and we can solve that in Nebraska. When I go out and talk to all the voters in Nebraska, all the way out in the Panhandle, in Lincoln, in Omaha, and everywhere in between, they want natural green solutions. That includes wind, that includes planting hemp. When you plant hemp into our soils, it cleans up those water tables. Hemp is a natural absorber. They use that in radioactive sites like Chernobyl to clean up radioactive materials. We can use hemp to clean up our water sources, and then we can turn around and burn that hemp into high energy methane. And that is how our country is going. And that is how Nebraska gets ahead in this country. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mike McGowan.
Thank you. I'm not an opponent of fracking. I do think some of the environmental issues need to be studied further. The fracking has done a great job, service to this country. As Tom Ward said, it's put a lot of people to work. It's also gotten us close to energy independence. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, when we were short of natural gas and we were importing oil and oil prices were skyrocketing, that caused a lot of problems to our company, our country, and our ratepayers. Prices were sky high. We are very fortunate now. Fracking has delivered a lot of good, well-priced natural gas supplies. I do think it needs to be studied further, but right now, I don't think there's any real solid proven evidence that it is causing real problems.
Thank you. We're done with the question and answer portion of our forum, and we'll now go to our closing statements, and we'll begin with Tom Wirtz.
Oh, thank you. How much time do we have?
We have 1 minute for closing statements.
Thank you. I too grew up east of 72nd Street. I went to Rommel High School, which is now Ron Colley, St. Pius X grade school. If I'm elected to the board of the directors, even though I now live west of 72nd Street, I'm going to represent all of the ratepayers, all of our customers. As I said earlier, one of the things I really want to do is keep MUD public. This utility is not going to be sold. It's not going to be sold to a hedge fund. When you call down to MUD with a problem, you're going to call a well-trained individual, and you're not going to be talking to a call center in Indiana or India or someplace like that. Second of all, I really want to set up another fund, as I talked about earlier, similar to the Heat Aid Fund, to really help people that are just outside the economic cutoff of the Heat Aid Fund, that have come into some sort of problem in their life, and to really help people. Appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jim Cusack.
Well, thank you for this evening, for it gives us all an opportunity to talk. I just wanted to say that I had 6 goals that I would come in as the board, and I pretty much defined these throughout the broadcast tonight. But I'll kind of reiterate the six. First of all, primemost is safety. Second is security. And what I mean by that is internal security, security of the facility, security of the employees, which are very important, cybersecurity. Another one that we haven't talked much about tonight, but is very important, we talked about it in the bill, is customer service. The fifth is, I think the MUD employees need to be embellished the role that they have a service and obligation to our community, and for that they will get rewarded from me. And finally, I think one of the areas that we're really, really lacking at is working with the marketing alliances with our neighboring municipal utilities in Nebraska and Iowa. There's much to be gained by working with those people. They have tremendous wealth and tremendous knowledge. So I hope you consider voting for me on May 10th.
Thank you. Patrick McPherson.
As I've said, I believe that I can be a real advocate for the ratepayer. You've heard me talk about the need for more transparency. I bring a unique perspective to this board because I spent many years in the financial industry. I know how to read a financial statement and read an audit. I spent many years in this community serving on many boards and organizations. I also have spent time on other elected boards. I understand that there are some real opportunities here to better serve the customer. But bottom line is our most important priorities are our fiduciary responsibilities, they're providing safety to our ratepayers, and they're providing transparency to those ratepayers. I'd appreciate your vote on May 10th. Thank you.
Thank you. Crystal Gable.
Thanks to League of Women Voters. I really appreciate being here. To close, I want you to know that I represent you. I'm young. I know what is going on in our country, and I know that a lot of young people are leaving Nebraska because we lack opportunity here. And by voting me into this utilities board, we're going to make utilities interesting and relevant in Nebraska. You're going to want to come to our board meetings, and you're going to want to read our newsletters, and you're going to get that bill, and you're going to understand it. And I am going to bring change to this board. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike McGowan.
First of all, I'd like to thank the League and express my appreciation for this opportunity tonight and hosting this forum. Also for publishing your candidate guide and with the responses of each of us to the questions there. We truly need informed voters to elect the most qualified candidates. You've heard all of us here tonight. I have extensive leadership experience in the utility business. I fully understand the utility business and can make a difference. I know how to provide safe and reliable water and natural gas service at the lowest possible cost. I am retired. I have the time and the personal commitment to do this job the way it should be done. No other candidate has the combined knowledge, experience, and personal commitment to do the job like I do. I would. Please vote for Mike McGowan on May 10th. Thank you.
Thank you. And Burt Mayer.
First, I would like to thank the League again for this opportunity. I am a CPA and an attorney. In my 8 years in public accounting, my largest clients were public utilities, including Northern Natural Gas and Iowa Public Service Company. I know the financial side of how public utilities operate. As an attorney, I understand that the board of directors of a public entity like MUD has a fiduciary obligation to the ratepayers. It must maintain independence from management. I think the voters of our community do not want to recycle former members of management, former board members, whose legacy is M's Pub. It is time to move forward with a younger generation of leaders. It is time for people like Mr. Frost to pass the torch to the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you. That concludes our candidate forum for MUD Board.